Senator Gbarpolu. Today, Senator Konneh will be giving his perspective on the President's State of the Nation's address that was delivered to the nation yesterday. And you'll be touching key issues, specifically probably in the areas of the economy, health, and other critical areas that were touched yesterday by the President. So thank you. Again, welcome.
Thank you, Henry. Members of the press, fellow Liberians. Yesterday, in fulfillment of Article 58 of our Constitution, President Joseph Nyuma Boakai appeared before the 55th Legislature to deliver the 2025 State of the Nation Address, SONA, and outline his priorities for 2026. This was President Boakai's third annual message to the Liberian people since he became president. To those of us who witnessed yesterday's event here at the Capitol, and to others who listened to him in Radio Land, the SONA was a vital constitutional duty in which the President reports on the nation's condition, outlines his legislative priorities, and set a national agenda for the legislature and the public. The SONA facilitates communication between the three branches of government. It serves as a key political tool for most people and provides a direct link between the Commander-in-Chief and the Liberian people. This year's annual message on the state of our country was an important democratic obligation midway into the President's 6-year term, and I wonder how many of us stopped to think about the uniqueness of yesterday's program, and also about our uniqueness as a people since the end of our bitter civil war, and the opportunity that this constitutional provision creates for a national dialogue between the President and the country. I want to acknowledge the effort and thank the President and his team for presenting the 2026 State of the Nation Address as detailed as it was. My responsibility today as a senator and a former Minister of Finance and Development Planning is to engage in a dialogue with the President, his team, and the Liberian people by providing an honest assessment of the state of our country, grounded in facts, one that helps move the arrest agenda for inclusive development forward. My assessment is guided by 4 questions. First, what did the President promise in his 2025 SONA? Second, what did the President actually deliver over the course of 2025? Third, what is the President now promising in the 2026 SONA? And fourth, what concrete actions are required to address the daily realities of prices, jobs, and services, all of which make up the bread and butter issues that all of us have been discussing during 2025. So I invite all Liberians to walk with me from the 2025 SONA to the present along this journey We will assess how the government performed against the promises it made last year, because it is often said that the best indicator of future performance is past behavior. If we are to place confidence in our president's new commitment, then we must first examine the outcome of his 2025 SONA promises. So let us take the inventory. Last year, President Boakai promised a decisive shift from rescue to development, anchored in the arrest agenda, and presented to the country an $8.4 billion national plan. He pledged to make agriculture the backbone of the economy, increase economic opportunities for Liberians by making them true owners of the economy, accelerate road development, expand access to electricity, strengthen governance and the rule of law, and deliver better services across education, health, water, and sanitation. However, while some progress was recorded in some of these areas, the reality, fellow citizens, is that 2025 fell short of the president's ambitious agenda. Agriculture, for example, funding was slashed and repurposed. Liberians remain spectators in their economy today. Foreigners are manufacturing and selling planting chips in our country. The capital city remains filthy. Progress on major road corridors slowed down. Food prices decreased marginally, but consumers are still complaining of high retail prices in some areas of the country, even in this city, despite government intervention. Domestic production did not improve, and job creation did not match the scale of the unemployment crisis. Most of the jobs the president reported yesterday, and as he rightly said, were short-term or project-based jobs. They were not the sustainable private sector jobs that we need to absorb Liberia's growing youthful population. There were, however, bright spots in the president's accomplishments that deserve acknowledgement. Infrastructure, for example, saw meaningful progress, even though progress on key corridors slowed down. And we hope that those corridors will advance and a robust maintenance programs will be put in place to improve road conditions in parts of the country. Electricity access visibly expanded through new connections and rural electrification and the Rural Electrification Agency were extended in several communities led by a dynamic managing director. The Liberia Revenue Authority, led by my friend and brother Dobo Jala, delivered strong revenue performance, strengthening diplomatic ties and securing international goodwill. These achievements, nevertheless, must now translate into increased foreign direct investment, expanded trade, and stronger partnerships that create jobs and grow the Liberian economy. Economic diplomacy should become a central pillar of our development strategy going forward. These gains matter, and they show what is possible when institutions are properly led, focused, and resources are aligned. They also highlight how much more remains to be done. Yesterday, President Boakai also noted that an abrupt slash in donor support during the second quarter of last year disrupted financing for essential social services and economic projects, leading to job losses, reduced incomes, and hardships for many families. While the government stepped in to close some funding gaps and keep critical services running, the deeper consequences of that disruption were never fully addressed. Thousands of jobs lost during that period were not restored. Stalled procurement contracts, including housing and community infrastructure, were not revived, and many of the affected communities and businesses have yet to recover. These gaps persist today and continue to undermine confidence in the government's ability to deliver sustained, broad-based economic relief. Of budget spending. From the public accounts and expenditures standpoint, when President Boakai said yesterday that the Weah project is fully funded by the government of Liberia, at a time when there is no appropriation in the national budget and no evidence of a lawful procurement process, this raises serious questions about the use of public funds. This is especially concerning because any public spending outside the budget and procurement framework, as good as the project may seem, is irregular and requires immediate legislative scrutiny. Macroeconomic stability. I agree with the President on the macroeconomic stability achieved in 2025. Inflation declined, reserves increased, and revenue performance improved. These are important indicators that provide a foundation for long-term growth. And I applaud his economic team, led by my friends and brothers, Finance Minister Augustine Gafuan and CBL Governor Henry Samoa. However, macro stability alone does not translate into relief for ordinary Liberians. I've been there. We registered many gains in terms of indicators, but the reality was getting the gains to affect people has been the challenge for successive governments. The bread and butter issues remained unresolved. The prices of food and transportation costs, despite government intervention last year, still remain high in some areas, as I said before. Unemployment and underemployment are widespread. Water and sanitation challenges persist, and basic services are still weak in many communities. Until stability is matched by concrete improvements in the daily realities of food, jobs, sanitation, and service delivery, its impact will remain distant from the lives of most Liberians. The performance of the arrest agenda. In my humble opinion, the arrest agenda's performance in 2025 struggled and fell far short of expectations. Agriculture saw no measurable increase in impactful domestic food production, with the sector receiving less than 2% of the national budget proposed by the executive branch. Food prices remain high, and Liberia continues to rely on food imports to feed its growing population. This is not sustainable. Roads recorded some progress through the ratification of the Pavifort Agreement that is going to open the Western Corridor and improve access to the southeastern part of our country. But no major corridors linking the secondary economic corridors of our country to the primary corridors from Monrovia to Ganta were completed. And feeder roads across the country, particularly in my home county of Gbarpolu, remain in poor conditions. Governance reforms were limited, The rule of law has a lot of noise in that sector, with more than 20% of intervention in the arrest agenda and over 1/3 not reported on, reflecting weak enforcement and persistent corruption concerns. Education and healthcare efforts continued, yet Liberia remains ranked 178 out of 191 countries on the Global Human Development Index. And schools still lack basic supplies, trained teachers. For 2 years now, we have not fully addressed the issues of volunteer teachers, despite the resources provided by the legislature in 2024. Sanitation and health services improved in a few communities, but most areas continue to face poor sanitation, drug shortages in healthcare facilities, and weak service delivery, contributing to a multidimensional poverty rate above 45%. This is too high. Last year, the Senate, led by the President pro tempore, Senator Yumli Kanga Lawrence, had to intervene to resolve the slow disbursement of resources and supplies to medical institutions in all 15 counties. Tourism benefited from the passage of the National Tourism Act, but limited infrastructure, slow reforms, and lack of funding prevented the sector from contributing meaningfully to job creation and economic growth. This, my fellow Liberians, made the walk through 2025 for the ordinary Liberian difficult, one marked by high unemployment, poor sanitation, weak social services, and slow implementation across key sectors. These conditions widened the gap between what was promised by the President and what was delivered. Although the President's message highlights progress in some areas, it did not fully confront the pressure that shape our people's daily lives. Therefore, I would characterize 2025 as a year of slow progress and of missed opportunities. There was progress in some areas, as the President noted, which we fully agree with, but not at the scale required to shift the needle on the daily realities of our people. With a higher budget now, the largest in the country's history at 1.2 billion, and stronger revenue performance, 2026, the midway of President Boakai's 6-year term, offers a new opportunity to correct course, but only if implementation becomes the central priority of the administration and we can embrace constructive criticisms of each other and hold each other accountable for results in the interest of the Liberian people. The 2026 SONA. In this year's SONA, the President presented an optimistic account of the nation's direction, stating that Liberia is stronger today than it was a year ago. He highlighted progress, some of which I have mentioned, but I welcome the President's legislative agenda for 2026. It includes several important proposals, but two deserve special attention from my perspective. These are the National Planning Commission and the National Road Authority. Liberia does have a planning function within the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, but it has been neglected for some time now. It is under-resourced and structurally unable to provide coherent national planning, budgeting alignment, and long-term development strategy the country desperately needs. This institutional weakness has contributed to fragmented implementation across sectors and inconsistent follow-through on national priorities. As a former Minister of Planning and Economic Affairs, I know how essential a strong planning institution is to disciplined budgeting and effective development management. I therefore offer my full support to work with others to champion the establishment of the proposed National Planning Commission so that Liberia can finally restore coherence, discipline, and accountability to its planning and budgeting processes. The proposal to establish a national road authority is equally important. Roads remain the backbone of the national integration and economic activity, yet maintenance is inconsistent, coordination is weak, and responsibility is scattered across institutions. A dedicated authority with clear mandates for construction, maintenance, and financing is essential if we are to move from ad hoc interventions to a sustainable national road system. The President's proposal, and look forward to working with my colleagues here in the Senate to ensure that the institution is designed with the independence, technical capacity, and financing mechanism required to deliver when the President sends the bill here. Job creation and private sector development. Fellow Liberians, the President spoke yesterday about the Youth Bank and job opportunities. These are promising initiatives, but they must be integrated into a broader, more coherent national job creation strategy. That strategy must link agriculture, infrastructure, skills development, and private sector growth into a unified plan that integrates Liberia's young population into meaningful, sustainable work. Private sector development programs must anchor these initiatives and serve as the basis for a larger platform to grow small businesses, expand employment, and position the country to benefit from the investments we are going to be making in roads, expanded electricity access, and procurement opportunities in mining and other sectors. This is an opportunity to develop the informal sector as well, where most Liberians are working to address their daily struggles. The market women, the bricklayer, the carpenters, the mechanics, they are in this sector. It is also a chance to help Liberians reclaim ownership of their economy and participate more fully in its growth, something that the President promised during his campaign and has been promising since he became president. We must deliver on that. We must give the economy back to our people. This is the surest way of fixing the vexing bread and butter issues. President Boakai also reported that his administration created 70,000 jobs in 2025. This is a significant claim that requires careful context. The World Bank data for 2024 shows an official unemployment rate of 2.88%. out of a formal labor force of about 2.61 million people. Adding 70,000 jobs to an economy with such a low recorded unemployment rate would suggest near full employment, which does not reflect the reality most Liberians face today. As the President rightly said, much of our labor force is engaged in informal or low productivity work, where underemployment is widespread, even when official unemployment appears low. Therefore, a balanced reading is that the 70,000 figures the President reported yesterday, and was clear that they were temporary jobs or informal activities, were rather temporary. They were not stable long-term jobs. Most of those in that 70,000 figures are probably unemployed today after their short-term employment ended. This highlights the need for clearer definitions, stronger labor market data collection, and a job creation strategy focused on the quality and sustainability of work, not just its quantity. To conclude, fellow Liberians, you elected the president and the rest of us to make life easier for you and your families. We, and I mean the president and the other 104 elected officials, including myself, must now deliver on the commitments already made to the Liberian people in the arrest agenda. Liberia has the potential to advance under this administration, but progress will depend on discipline, delivery of results, transparency, and a renewed focus of accountability. The state of the nation will be stronger only when citizens feel change in their daily lives, from the prices they pay to the services they receive from their government. It will be stronger when we see fewer children selling plantain chips, almonds, and other items on Tubman Boulevard, whom the president doesn't see while driving to work because security personnel clear the streets of vehicles and pedestrians when he is heading to the executive mansion for work. The state of our nation will be stronger when patients requiring emergency care are not told that they will have to pay first before they can be admitted. It will improve when our classrooms are staffed by qualified teachers. This is the measure that matters, and it is the responsibility we must now meet together. So as we move through 2026, our actions must match our ambitions and public statements, and every commitment to the Liberian people must be honored with urgency and discipline. Our government has no power except that granted to it by the people. So it is time to check and reverse the hardship on our people. Our government has also grown too fat, too big. It is even bigger now than when President Boakai inherited it. It is time to check and reverse the growth of the government, which shows no signs of exceeding the consent of the governed. The task before us is clear, the economy may have taken off, but please remember that there were turbulence and bumps through midterm last year. Now is the time to stabilize the flight and guide its safety to 2029. As always, we stand ready to do our part by working with our colleagues, the President and his team, without compromising our independence. Thank you.
Again, thank you. Thank you to the press, ladies and gentlemen of the press.
No.
Again, I'm Henry Wildwood Jr. We will take 4 questions.
No.
Okay.